All right, welcome back to another edition of Queen City Reds. I am joined today by the man who once said that ball had a family. He's called everything from NFL to college basketball, and now he's the TV play-by-play voice for the Cincinnati Reds. John Sadak. John, thanks for hopping on. This is really cool for me. Happy you're here today. Um, Thanks for being here.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for having me. And I love what you do. I have to share something with you that this is the first time you're hearing it. We just started this thing. Uh, I catch up on a lot of the post-game sound through your channel. We used to put it out through our own social media. We don't anymore. And so the easiest and best place for me to find it without having to force Jim Day, hey, can you repeat everything that everybody told you, is to just watch it firsthand on what you do. So thank you for what you do.
I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, that people seem to love that. But all right, before we get to any red stuff, I kind of want to talk to just a little bit about you, your background, everything. You've obviously worked about it seems like about every sport out there. Was there ever one time broadcasting a sport and you're like maybe this isn't for me?
I felt that intimidation factor getting prepped for things I'd never done before, like on almost every event. Probably most pronounced with water polo and field hockey. Yeah, a relationship that I had before I met my wife was with a field hockey player. And she had played her whole life and she coached, she played in college. And I asked her once, like, could you tell me if I sat with you what every whistle meant the entire match? And she said, no, like there would be at least one where I wasn't sure what it was. That was intimidating when then I had to do the final four of field hockey and compress like all that knowledge down. But that's where thankfully I've been with partners who were, experts in their sport that spent lifetimes in their sport, and that always helped. But yes, yeah, there were definitely times where getting ready for things I never played, never really watched all that much, and now I have to commentate on it is really intimidating.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that's crazy. So, all right, coming off of that, you mentioned Jim Day a little earlier. So here's a lighthearted question for you. Was it really Jim Day's fault earlier this year that you guys missed your flight to Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah, we're in Pittsburgh right now. We've reminded him of it a few times. He's still a little sensitive about it. Somehow he's sensitive about it. Yeah, I mean, like the normal protocol for a long time, and this wasn't really his job. Yeah, he was just being nice. Was that he would send us the time, and he wasn't going on that trip. He did not mean it maliciously. He was not trying to dupe us. He was trying to help us, but he accidentally sent the wrong time. And Tommy and Chris and I were upstairs in the radio booth hanging out, BSing. We should have been downstairs earlier. And yeah, I get to the ground floor and our director calls me and she's like, "Where are you?" We're getting off the elevator. Well, we pulled out, like we're away to the airport. Uh, yes, yeah, we love Jim. I like giving him some lighthearted guff, but yeah, it is his fault. Yeah.
That's incredible. So I actually, when I think it was in high school, I had a couple friends. We went on like a baseball trip for like our senior trip. We went to like Milwaukee, Chicago, the Reds, I think Cleveland, like 5 or 6 stadiums. And we had the idea to wear white T-shirts that had Jim Day. We had Jim and then Day on the back of our shirts, and we had a photo with that. And I tweeted that at him a couple times, and he always laughs about it. But yeah, Jim Day is a national treasure. But I always laugh at that story when you guys tell it on the air. So all right, so you're obviously a New Jersey guy. You're a Rowan grad. You've been calling the Reds games for a couple years now. Can you kind of just walk me through, in your eyes, kind of how all that happened? Because obviously, sports broadcasting is a tough thing to break into. Like you said, you're calling field hockey. It's not like you're just calling. You go from straight minor league baseball, and then all of a sudden you're calling Reds games. You're calling a lot of things.
Yeah, the what I would share is that I was a finalist, if not the runner-up, for multiple other high-tier jobs in both Major League Baseball and in the NBA, and I had a chance to fill in both sports, in some big markets as well. And I thought I had landed other jobs before the Reds. Like I had that last interview, and I was convinced it was happening. And there were other working parts in those processes and people that I knew that made me feel extremely confident that I had those jobs. And I didn't get any of them, obviously, and they were some of them were close to my boyhood and fandom, and it was like soul crushing. Like it's. In many ways, it's harder, and it sounds counterintuitive, and it is, but it's just the human reality. If you get to the finish line and don't get there with each repeated time, it gets more difficult. And I preface what I'm about to say with that because the Reds job was kind of by happenstance. I was familiar with what had happened before my arrival. And like everybody in the world that aspires to do this, yes, I was among the, I'm sure, at least hundreds, if not thousands of people who sent something to the team asking, like, are you going to do a search? Like, would you consider somebody? And I got no response, as I'm sure the rest of the world did. And I didn't really think anything of it. And time flew by. And then, we're still in the thick of COVID. So we're doing a lot of games for CBS remotely. There's a place called Freedom that still exists that they do some stuff out of, but that was like the home base during that time. And it was Greater New York and North Jersey. It was in a warehouse that looked like Tony Soprano had dumped somebody in a garbage bin like around the corner. And we would call games off a monitor in there. So I'm there doing a college basketball game, and I get a call from my agent, and he asked, how would you like to interview to be the TV voice of the Cincinnati Reds? And my honest, immediate reaction was, yeah, okay, cool. That sounds cool. And he got furious at me, and rightfully so. I was like, I would thought you'd be a little more excited. But my honest thought at the time was, I had been that close way more than once, and I knew major decision makers. And that's really what our industry comes down to a lot.
Yeah.
It's less about like your ability, because that's so subjective anyway, who's good and who's not. That's really hard to say concretely, because no matter how good I think a person is, you'll find some person in the audience who hates them and thinks they're terrible. But at the same time, because I knew all those situations so well, this time I'm going to something blind. I'm like, I don't know anybody at the Reds. Like, so if they're interviewing me, it's because they predetermined we're going to interview 3 or 5 or 7 or whatever it is, and my resume lines up, so I fit in that. But someone else is going to be way more connected than me, because when I lost out at all those other jobs, that's what it was. It was somebody who was way more connected than I was.
Yeah.
I mean, in one case, I knew the president of the team, and the other person knew somebody that was more influential than that. So that's just the way it works. Not to be defeatist, but I also didn't want to have my heart broken. I felt like I was so close so many other times before. And I went into all those sessions with that sensation of like, not in the beginning that I was going to get it, that it was fait accompli, that I desperately wanted it. So I almost was just, like if you got burned in relationships repeatedly, you would enter with some trepidation into the next one. So that was really the sense that I had. And he kind of like yelled at me, scolded me, and I think somewhat fairly. And then and that wasn't going to diminish that I didn't want it or that I wasn't going to try. I didn't think it was very likely. And then he said, well, you're going to interview with this guy on this day. And then it started to click, like, oh my gosh, like that guy actually was a major decision maker with another job that I was up for. I do know somebody. I know, like, apparently a fairly significant somebody. And then I also started putting together how many people in my other broadcast life had strong Cincinnati ties. I had done a lot of games with Jordan Cornette at CBS Sports Network. Rocky Boyman was my first major college football partner. And then I'm like, wow, actually, I think I know like 15 people that are like fairly connected in some way to the team, to the network, to the city in some kind of way. And then just went through the interview process. And with each successive round, then I'm like, do I really have a shot at this? Like, could this really happen? And I never, ever would have guessed it. And that's life, right? Like all those other situations, I thought, yeah, that seems likely. Yeah, that seems destined. Yeah, and this one I thought, no shot. And here we are. And I'm talking to you right now.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, that's really cool. So saying that, kind of coming off of that, what was the moment you felt like kind of going through the broadcast injury or through the industry, you're kind of like, okay, I think I can actually, do this for a living?
I think I had confidence that I could do it for a living fairly early in A-ball. It is hard when you first get your reps. I was very fortunate that I got to intern in 2004 with a high A team in Wilmington, Delaware. They were a Royals affiliate, the Wilmington Blue Rocks. And To be honest, I'm very ignorant about how the minors work today because post COVID and as the labor laws appropriately have come into play, I think it's changed the structure. But throughout my 15 years in the minors, it was very common if you were a full season minor league baseball team, you had a lead announcer that could be full time, could be seasonal, and that pay strata would be enormous. But most of them would also have a seasonal intern or number two. And that is usually a kid, who's fairly young, pretty recent college grad. I made $1,200 a month before taxes. I lived in my aunt's basement, who lived 20 minutes from the park. I was lucky in that regard. And I think I was on the higher end of earners. Like many made nothing, or maybe a couple of $100 or had to do some other job. And you usually did PR, and that's what I did. So I helped doing a lot of the game notes and then copies and distributing stat packs. And you would have to make sure everything's ready for the coaches when they get in. You would help on tarp duty. You would help clean the stadium. And the carrot they dangle to get you to do that is you get to do 3 innings at home games. That was awesome because I know I was terrible in the very beginning, even though I had college reps. I really believe in the Malcolm Gladwell theory, the 10,000 hour idea to become the best version of yourself, to get good at anything. And that's definitely true with this. To get okay at play by play, you have to do it. And that's what I tell young announcers all the time. And if you can get a paid job doing it, great. Yes, that's the goal. But if you can't, especially in today's world, do whatever you can. Like the sport I played the most, I played everything and I loved all sports growing up. But the sport I played the most in my high school years was hockey. And I really wanted a job in hockey at that point. We did not have a college team, not even a club team. So I stopped playing in my summer house league with my friends, several of whom played for their college teams. And my best friend from high school, who played on the team with me, and I would record fake broadcasts of our house league team into a physical cassette deck. And that's how I made my initial demo tapes, because I just think you have to do it to get good at it. But I think fairly early, within the first year or two of when I was in Wilmington, I sent a tape in for the pre-post and fill-in play-by-play with the Phillies. I didn't get it, but I got a call back. And like the idea that I just got a call from a big league team is like, wow, then maybe I do have some ability. But I would also say if there's any mistake that I made in that time, that I regret. I made a lot of mistakes, as everybody does and kind of needs to. And that's part of where the minors were great, because you could make mistakes that don't have the same consequence. The one I should have known better earlier is I don't think I was aggressive enough early enough. I think I constantly had this insecurity or self-doubt of this isn't the perfect tape. Like there's this one hiccup, or I didn't nail this aspect of it, and that was stupid because most of my peers who were getting jobs had far more flaws than that, even at the time. I should have just submitted what my best stuff was and let the decision makers decide what's good enough or not good enough. And I think I inhibited myself by also not wanting to be that syrupy used car salesman that's constantly shilling and pitching. And however, as the years went on, I got into like my mid late 20s. I started looking at peers that I didn't think were that good. I didn't think were great people all the time either. They were getting jobs. I'm like, why are they getting these jobs? They just had the guts to ask the hot girl out every single time. And they didn't care about getting shot down at all. And then I realized that's kind of the mentality you have to have. You just have to put yourself out there. And if you don't get it, you don't get it. You're going to make mistakes, but go ahead and do it. And that's probably what I should have done earlier.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. So this year's been a little different. It's not you and the same people every time. You got Barry at home. You got the Cowboys been doing more TV this year, which I think you and the Cowboy are phenomenal. And then last night you have Chris Welsh up in the booth. Is that hard to kind of having to constantly have someone different in the booth with you, or is it something you've done enough games with a lot of them that you just kind of get everybody's feel, or how's that like to adjust when you're doing it daily?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where my national work helps. I've been lucky most of my time at CBS Sports on college football. Randy Cross has been my football partner. But more recently, because I have to miss about half the season due to the Reds, we're now together maybe once or twice a year, and it's kind of a hodgepodge. throughout my time with Westwood One, I've had a flurry of different partners for NFL, for college football, college basketball, including the tournament. And so you have to learn people's strengths and weaknesses, what they like, what they don't like, what gets them going. Because I view the play-by-play role even more pronounced on TV. In radio is the play-by-play person's medium. You're the director, you're calling all the shots, and the analyst, depending upon the sport particularly, is just finding those thin windows to get in. But you're painting the entire word picture. On TV, to me, the star is the analyst. The analyst should be driving a lot of the conversation. Your open content should be driven through the lens of the analyst, which is going to be different with each person. Position player in baseball versus a pitcher. What do they see more of? What do they view as most important? What are they going to be watching during the game? That's where, like, Randy, to me, on college football has always been so exceptional that we'd get in a production meeting, and by that Thursday, Friday before the Saturday game, if we ask him, what do you think are the biggest 2-3 matchups? Where should we have an extra camera shooting? He is right like 90% of the time. You got to look at the wing back and what the inside backer is going to do. Their secondary is going to give up a big play at some point. Will they be able to recover from it and stiffen up in the red zone? Turnovers are going to be critical because of how this team plays. And then we follow those stories accordingly. So with the Reds, I love all our people. We all get along. We all get along with each other, which is, I know rare might be an overstatement. It doesn't happen everywhere. Not every team do the radio and TV crews, play-by-play, color reporter, everybody go out and hang out regularly. And we do. We really like each other. That said, yeah, I mean, everybody's style is different. So I try to adjust myself accordingly to help them be the best version of themselves. And yes, this year, Jeff has been the main road TV analyst. Before we pivoted back to what is now branded as FanDuel, there was a time where we were going to be MLB.TV. They sent out a press release about that. And the plan when that switch was coming was for that to happen, was that Cowboy would be the main road analyst. So they basically retained the same schedule that we were going to have otherwise. And I love working with everyone. But yeah, the chance to be with Cowboy for my first 4 years, he would do 25 games a year. Now we're together even more. I learn something every single time we're together, and we have so much fun off air. And I try to bring some of those conversations up as we're coming back from break. He's very observant. He knows umpires incredibly well. Like, I'll sit down and just ask, tell me about this guy's strike zone. And that thumbnail sketch he gives, like 99% of the time, it's exactly what happens in the game.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you guys have been terrific together. All right, let's talk about let's get into some Reds talk and just the team's performance on the field this year. I guess just before we get into anything specific, what are your kind of thoughts around the team in general this year? It feels like, they win 3, they lose 2, they win 4, they lose 4. They've been, I know for the longest time, they were never above 500 or 4 games over 500 and never below 4 games under 500. Now lately it's been kind of 4 games to 6 games above 500. Just what are your general thoughts, I guess, around the team at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good summation of where they are right now. I think and this has been somewhat along the lines of what's happened throughout most of my tenure, the 100-loss 22 season, outstanding. They played a competition a lot. They play really well against good teams, exceptionally well. And against the bad teams, they've had a rough year. Joel had texted me. I gave the stat during the game late last night. And forgive me, I don't know if it included last night's game as a fait accompli at the time. They were 14-15 against the 5 worst teams in baseball, and that includes winning 5 of 6 against the Rockies team that might be the worst major league team in the modern era. That's a little alarming, and that's kind of weird. And I have a hard time describing exactly what it is. Is it just the adrenaline of playing up, which often also means playing in front of bigger crowds, better juice, better environment. And, bluntly, in Pittsburgh last night, actually, their crowd was pretty good and they were really into Paul Skeens, but that's been atypical of my experiences here in this time. I know in the early 2010s when they were really good, that was different. But there is a different feel. And you watch, and I read your stuff too. I believe in a lot of stats. Like I think stats have tremendous value. That's basically says whether you're good or not, whether you've achieved or
Right.
not, right? It's the back of the baseball card, as they would always say. But this is a human sport, and I don't like how a lot of Saber ideology dismisses the human element. That very much is also there. Can't quantify it, hard to do that, but it exists. You can feel when those, like that 8-run inning, you can feel that coming. If you're in the ballpark and you know the sport you're watching, you feel that. I don't know what triggers that or doesn't. And I think that's where we take for granted a little bit that, there are some years under some of these guys' belts, but they're still relative puppies in the sport. That there's not that great breadth of experience for the group as a whole. And I think they're still kind of figuring out who they are as players. I think there really is something to that. And I think they pitch great. I think they've been relatively pretty lucky with their health, with their pitching staff. I mean, even though Rhett Lauder hasn't thrown all year, Abbott started late, Hunter's missed 2 months, Lodolo just went on the IL. That said, especially compared to where this staff has been during my time, they've gotten, I think, more innings and more starts out of their best pitchers pitching well this year than any other year. I think the bullpen has actually been very good on the whole. I think that's like a default response from some when they lose. There goes the bullpen again. Do you watch the games? Do you read the stats? Like, they're actually pretty above average. Tony Santillan is a beast. That guy has had an incredible year. He's one of the best relievers in the game right now. He had 2 bad weekends against the Cubs. That's really it. I mean, like, most of his year, he has been as nails as you can be against the prime hitters in almost every lineup. And I think Pagan has been excellent to close games. The offense is the wanting part. Their defense has gotten much better with Key Brian Hayes. I like what we've seen out of Noel B. Marte so far. He just had an outfield assist through a guy out at the plate last night, the opener against the Pirates. I think he's going to screw up another fly ball. Like, that's going to happen because he's never played there before. But on the whole, I think he can be a really good outfielder. And if that can help his bat as well, that is awesome. And the Reds have had a need for a corner outfielder with some pop that's a right-handed hitter. And so if you can solve that in-house by repurposing where he's playing, that's a huge value, a huge add. But they have a hard time consistently scoring runs. And that is all the more true against great pitching. I think that's true of most teams in the game to a different extent. But if you want to be on that short list of playoff teams, you want to go to and compete in the playoffs, they do have to improve offensively. That is the truth. And I think you're still seeing them kind of round into that form. I'm hopeful with McLean, who's had a really good now 3+ weeks in a row where he's hitting over 300, that he can move back into that form in 23. That's where, the 2 spot is an incredibly important spot. Anybody who's hitting in front of and behind Ellie De La Cruz is massively important because it directly informs how he is pitched, and he is their most dangerous hitter. On the whole, I think Ellie, as their most dangerous hitter, has taken huge strides in the right direction. The strikeouts are down. The walks are up. The contact rate is up. You watch his at-bats. He grinds at bats. He sometimes can be a little swing aggressive early in counts, but even if he is and he gets to 0-2, he finds a way to work a 6, 7, 8 pitch AB, and he's getting on base at a higher rate. I think the sacrifice so far at this point has been we're not seeing that dynamic power in quite the same way, and part of that's because he's delivering more opposite field contact. I think you're going to see that closer to perfect storm coalesce at some point. But he needs ABs. He needs to play. He really could use somebody in front and behind him consistently healthy and playing at a high level. And I think that'll come. You'll see him hit for the 275 to 290 or higher average, a slightly even lower strikeout number, and more doubles and home run power. And I think if and when he takes that step, which would be aided the most by a a bigger, even more legit thumper hitting ideally behind him. That's when I think maybe the offense can take even another step.
Yeah, for sure. And you hit on a spot that was kind of into my next question. I was going to talk about the offense, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I've kind of been on this train for a little bit. But it just feels like, and you talked about Ellie's power a little bit. It just feels like this team lacks kind of the power hitters that you need to have a good offense. Like the Reds last night is a perfect example. I think I forget who put it out, but somebody said they had 7 hits against Skeens, which is the most hits Skeens has allowed in his major league career, but they didn't score a run. So it just feels like, the team is not built for offense the way they, with just a lack of power. And then they're also being less aggressive on the bases last year. I know last year was a huge talking point of we need to stop getting thrown out on the bases. But I think that's the classic fans, not realizing their aggressiveness on the bases also created a lot of runs. But just in general, do you feel like a lack of power is something that this team, that's a reason for the lack of success on offense? I think it's been 25 times this season where they've scored 1 run or less, which when you say that out loud, that's kind of an alarming stat. But yeah, just what are your thoughts on the lack of, I guess, power on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think any team would benefit from more power. And because the Reds play Great American Ballpark, that's all the more true. Because if you just find a way to sneak an extra guy on base at some point and a guy hits a home run, it's instant offense. As soon as you hit a homer, everybody who's on base and that guy scores. You don't need any other situation to happen. You have runs instantaneously. Yes, I mean, you look at what the team's record is; it's some absurd number, and it seems self-evident. But I think when they've hit 3 or more homers, they've won like 30, 40 something such games in a row. Because they pitch so well that if they find a way to hit 3 or more homers, they're basically unbeatable. And that's probably true of most teams because if you hit home runs, especially if you hit a lot of them, you tend to win. Now, it doesn't mean everything. You look at the teams who lead their top 5, top 10 in homers every year. It doesn't directly match up with the best teams every year, but it does not hurt. Home runs help win games in convincing ways. And yeah, they would benefit from another guy with even extra base hit power. Even just more
exactly.
doubles would help too. And that's where you're also hopeful of not only that some guys that are on the team right now can continue to take other strides, but also some of the help that could be coming. I don't know exactly how Sal Stewart now gets here. If Key Brian Hayes is the third baseman for the next 4 years, the other position he's played, to my knowledge, to this point has been second base. Can he cross train in corner outfield? Could he play first? Because Spence can play a lot of positions as it is already. I don't know. And Hector Rodriguez is a really interesting dude. Who has continued to hit at a high rate. I think somehow he's still under the radar. I mean, I get how he was when they traded for him from the Mets. You're kind of taking a flyer on a young kid at a rookie ball, but all this dude has done is hit at every level. And he did chase a lot, but now at AAA, that chase rate is down. His zone swings and contact are up, and his defense that was not pretty in spring training, everything I hear at AAA is that it's way better. It's markedly improved, and he's another young talent that might be able to help. But yeah, I mean, like, would extra power help this team? Yes, yeah, it would help any team. But yes, this team perhaps even more because of that feast famine. That's what we've seen. They've had some explosive high scoring games this year, but they have had more than their share of very anemic, very light scoring games as well.
Yeah, I think the stat was, I think I looked it up last night. I think they're 16-44 this year when they don't hit a home run.
Yeah.
So that kind of paints the picture right there. Last one, kind of on the Reds as a whole, I guess. Just how has it been being around Terry Francona this season? Obviously, it seems like a great guy. Loves to crack a joke. I'm actually watching. I've had this on my list forever, but I'm actually watching the Netflix documentary about the Red Sox team that came back from the Yankees right now. And it's amazing what all the former Red Sox players have to say about the guy, about just how funny he is, how great he is to play for. But yeah, what's your vibe been being around Francona, and just how different is it from previous years?
I love Terry Francona. He is everything that you see, that is the dude. Like when we're in a closed room, he is the same guy. That's not a put on for cameras, or that is him. He loves the sport. He loves his players. He prepares his butt off. He is there super early every single day. He does a lot of advanced homework. And he is an older school baseball guy in some ways. The players know that he has their back. He gave us, on a personal and selfish level, instant access and trust. I mean, day one, spring training, day one at his press conference, incredibly accommodating, very honest with us, helps us a ton to tell the story of this team in different ways. I think he is a great fit for this team, particularly where it is right now. I think he's a great fit for almost any team. I think he adds a level of credibility, of success. He has been fantastic. I think the particularly the relationship that he has with a guy like Ellie, um, he knows how to sincerely make sure that the player feels how connected he is to him and how much he cares. And then he also is very honest when mistakes happen. He's not always going to do it through the media. He's not always going to say publicly, so and so, this, and this. It is addressed when mistakes happen, things happen, and tones can vary as appropriate or based on need. He directly handles it, and you see those mistakes minimized or eliminated thereafter. You're going to make mistakes. I mean, it's a live sport. Everything's happening fast, and sometimes that mental mistake in the moment, it could happen to anybody at any experience level. But I think that's where he's also exceptional, is the type of accountability that he holds the players up to, while letting them know sincerely, like, I'm not cutting you down. I'm not trying to bully or belittle you. I'm trying to help you. Trying to make you the best version of a baseball player you can be. And Chris Welsh says this all the time, and I think he's spot on. Great players want to be coached. Players want to be coached. If you're a player and you're a competitor, you want to win, and you want to be the best version of yourself. And also, by the way, this is a sport where these guys get compensated. You want to get paid. This guy can help you do that.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, a little lighter side. Just talking, you talked about obviously how you got into the announcing sphere and everything. So obviously when you're an announcer, you have everybody, you have people that love you, you have people that hate you. I have a couple funny tweets that I think you'll laugh at here. I'm kind of telling on myself here. And I preface this with, I'm obviously a huge fan of you, but May 23rd, 2024, I said, Sadak sounds so defeated. You know, it's bad when he can't even be positive. So I can only imagine what that day was like for the Reds. And then the second one on August 6, 2023, I said, big Sadak fan, but his energy is so low over this stretch that it's making me sad. It's like he's narrating a sad book. So my question with that is, it's a two-part question. Do you ever check, like, do you ever see comments on social media about like people that maybe don't like you? Is it just normal to see that kind of stuff, and does that affect you at all? And then the second question, it's got to be hard when the team is going through a bad stretch, because you're there always announcing, to keep the energy high, because I know I would have a hard time, not showing my emotions when you're like, man, the Reds have, like, a perfect stretch would have been when the Reds scored. They lost like 3 games in a row, 1-0 earlier this year.
1-0, yeah.
Like, that's hard to be positive for, and you don't always have to be positive, but it's hard to not, kind of be demoralized, I guess. So I guess kind of a 2-part question there.
Yeah, I would say on the first part, yeah, sometimes I do. I see the comments because sometimes people tag me in it, and I try to be accessible and relatable to fans, and people will write me and like asking questions or just wanting to give some comment. So yeah, and then that's where the mute button and the block button are, because like there are criticisms that I think are more than fair. And sometimes there are criticisms that are made that, like, I try to make adjustments based upon them. And then some people just will never like you. Like, and when you're in any front facing position, I mean, choose anybody who is like, even, and I am not super well known. I am not anywhere close to a celebrity. I just happen to call games for a baseball team that a lot of people like. Choose any name of any person that is in any way like quasi famous or just known within some small sphere. And I guarantee you, on today's X, Twitter particularly, you will find a lot of people who abhor that person. Um, eh, that's whatever makes people get through their day, as long as they're not personally attacking, members of my family or trying to like, directly physically impact them in some way. Say whatever you want. Like I feel the same way about like when they boo players. You paid your right to boo. You can boo whoever you want whenever you want. That's your right to fan. There is a line that you shouldn't cross. But the idea that you don't like somebody, yeah, like there are people I don't like too. I usually don't spend my day writing about it. I live my own
Tweeting at
life,
him.
but yeah. But if that makes you feel good, go ahead, because I'm still here and I'm not planning on leaving. So if it makes you feel good, then go ahead and do that. And I'm sorry, the other point was on the stretches. So
Yeah.
to me, I think part of the job of the local team announcer um, is to convey some of that feel in that spot. And I'm an emotional person. I mean, like the way I broadcast a game is the way I watch a game as a fan too. Like if it were my team not on air and I'm just watching them, I'm going to be at the Reds game tonight. I'm going to be going to the Reds Pirates. It's an Apple game, so I'm not announcing it. My best friend from high school is coming, and another buddy from high school, and we're going to watch the game in the stands. And my reactions and my conversation with them is probably not going to be that far off from what it would have been in the booth with Chris Welsh during the course of the game. But yeah, it can be hard when there are stretches where it's tough, and that's where you try to pivot and have other conversations and talking points and do the best job that you can. And that's where I think each guy shines in his own way with how they tell stories, have background, share something about their day. And also sometimes it's fine to just let the pictures talk, and just give less in some of those spots as well. But yeah, like I of course I want the Reds to do well. I mean, there's this I get where it's born out of. I understand the basic premise, and there's parts of it that I agree with, but there's this long-standing idea that you should be totally detached from the team. I think as a national announcer, that is decidedly true. Yes, you should just be telling the story of the game and wherever the game goes. As the local announcer, why would you not want your team to do well? Duh. I mean, yeah, like on every level, because those people on a more personal level. You get to see them regularly and talk to them. You meet and get to know their families. Um, that whether directly or indirectly, whether you're paid by the network or by the team, that's your employer. Like their financial success is informed by whether they win or not for both the individual and the collective unit. Yes, of course you would want your team to do well. And when they don't do well, yes, of course, over some point of time, that's going to match. And so, yeah, it can be, but it's not really hard. I mean, like, I have family members that were cops that served in the military that literally like roofed or dug ditches for the gas company. Like that's work. That's hard. I just sit in a chair and watch and talk about a baseball game. So it's never really hard, but on a relative level compared to the Reds destroying somebody 20-0. Yeah, I mean I guess so. But I'm really fortunate to do what I do. All of us are. Anybody who's in the sport in any way. That's what the sport is supposed to be, a form of, escapism, a prism through which competition can be kind of, in theory, leveled by rules and achievement can be recognized. It's a very human endeavor in many ways. Yeah, that's where I am far from an originator of this idea, but it's one that I've long ascribed to and I believe in. That I believe of all the sports, of all the things we get to do in this world, that baseball is the greatest allegory to life of all of them, because you can do the right thing and fail. You can do the wrong thing and luck into a good moment. But if you do the right thing as often as possible, which is not going to be every time, but it should be most of the time, then over the long haul, over a season, things will work out. You'll have good results. And that grind, which is hard. I mean, it's hard on these players. They make great money. and they're fairly compensated for what they're doing, and that's what the money is for in some ways. But sport's hard, like in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, on families as you get traded, or particularly in the minors, a part of this whole world that a lot of people don't see and are less familiar with. I mean, for every guy who's in the big leagues, there are dozens who have spent their entire life and will spend their whole life in the minor leagues. They never make great real money. There were very few first rounders that get paid on the front end. They really are doing it for the love of the game. And they usually come out of it either in debt or like with no savings. And now they have to pivot to a real job in their 30s. And yes, they got to play baseball for all that time. But think about that. If you're 33, you've never had any other job, you have no working background at all. Now they're thrust into the real world at that point. They love the sport, and their stories and their time and their effort and their talents. They are talented, even if they never. If you got to AAA and played until you were 33, you're a really good baseball player. You are in a small, slim percentage of the best to do it in your generation, and some of the best ever. It is incredibly inspirational and fun. And so even when the times go poorly, and yes, I feel that, and I think I show that, and some of that's intentional, and some of that's just my natural reaction. It's pretty darn cool the entire time.
Yeah, for sure. Really good stuff there. You said one thing that actually caught my attention, and it made me think of a couple parts. You can see behind me, I'm a big golf fan, but
Mhm.
I thought of like Jim Nantz when Jim Nantz was announcing the Masters and Tiger won, and I think he did it again when Rory won. Like they just didn't say a word for like 2 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that, and just like let fans take in the emotion of Tiger walking down, high-fiving all the fans, and the moment with this kid. And like that's some powerful stuff sometimes on TV in those moments, and that's kind of cool. As a broadcaster, you can kind of pick and choose those moments of, hey, this is a cool moment, let's just let it happen. But a couple, we'll just hit on a couple more here. Really appreciate you taking the time this morning. Do you have a normal routine that you kind of stick to on game days? Do you kind of change it up? What's that like? Obviously, I know it's obviously a grind of a season, even for you. I know you don't you're going to say, oh, I'm not a player or whatever, but like traveling all season is a lot too. So what's your kind of, day-to-day look like when you're out on the road with the team?
Yeah, and that's where home and road are a little different for me because I do have a family, and
Right.
so home I try to spend time with them. But like a good example, for this series yesterday, first day in at Pittsburgh, we got in the night before. I'll spend usually at least an hour to maybe two. I'll watch at least the last start of the opposing team starting pitcher, just his innings, and sometimes the last two or three, depending upon how it goes. And I watch their local team feed. And so part of that is they follow that guy every day. So they have some observations or some conversations that they could relate, that can also trigger in me other ideas on things to look up or talking points to. We have different relationships with different broadcasters. So like some of these guys I've known forever from our shared time in the minors, and I'll pick their brain. We'll pop in each other's booth and, hey, what do you got on this, and this? And here's some stuff on the Reds. And you can either use that outright or use that as a launching point to some other explorations of what's going on. But I want to see how their stuff plays. I want to see what pitch types actually look like. I want to see how umpires call things for or against them, and kind of get a feel for that. And then I'll start doing some deep diving into. We have some third-party research that the TV network pays for. There's some stuff that Cowboy gets through another agency on his own that he'll share with me. There's stuff that Chris gets through another group that he also shares with me. So it takes probably about another 45 minutes to an hour to read all of it, and then digest what do I like, what do I not like, what do I think is interesting. And then in the same fashion, sometimes that leads to other launching points. I try to get a workout in. I usually try to call a family member or a friend. And then sometimes I'll go right back into looking at some other stuff, and then head to the ballpark. And then that way I'm more informed. So if I run into a certain player or coach or other team announcer, that beyond the pleasantries, there also can be some functionality to, I can get right to, hey, here's like two or three things that I want to ask you about, and see if that can relate in some way to the game. But that's the biggest thing. And then day to day, it really depends. Sometimes I just have an idea on I want to look at X, Y, or Z thing. I think the greatest misnomer, um, and I get this from fans all the time. They have this perception that as you go to different cities, probably even more when I do like the national stuff, NFL and college basketball, that I'm exploring the cities. And I'd love to. I love traveling. I don't have time. I mean, like when I go on the road, I don't just show up at the game and just know these things off the top of my head. Like it takes hours of prep and reading and trying to learn stuff to be able to use that in the right moment. And I think that's part of our job is to try to set the stage for what's a trend, what's this guy good or bad at, what are the through the lens of the Reds, how can this impact the Reds winning or losing this game? What are the matchups to really be watching for? Sometimes it plays out, sometimes it doesn't. That's the great thing about sport. This is the last unscripted theater that exists in our world. That's why live event sport continues to get huge amounts of money in rights fees. The ratings continue to be overall very strong. And people tend to DVR things. And I can tell you how many friends I have in the industry that work in other pockets that are fans of different sports or different teams outside of their world. And heaven forbid on social or through a text, they get sent something about a result or what's happened before they've gone back and watched whatever that sport was. They are like rage fueled, like anger, because it's a joy to just watch the unexpected unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, you said something that made me have a follow-up question there. You said you do go down and talk to the players a good amount before the games. I know some announcers seem to like to go down to the clubhouse. Some seem to not like to go down there a whole lot. But I know Marty Brennaman always kind of said like when he would criticize players, he kind of got some respect from people because whether he criticized them or praised them, he'd always go down, in the clubhouse. He would never, criticize somebody and then be scared to share his face or show his face. But so is that something that you do pretty much daily? Do you always try to go down there and kind of talk to players and pick their brains about certain things?
I don't go every day.
Okay.
For me, so my opinion on that is informed by the announcers that I first engaged with when I was in the minors and then when I first got in the majors. So I spoke with Gary Cohen and Howie Rose of the Mets, with Michael Kay and John Sterling with the Yankees. I do view, and Cowboy also informs my opinion on this some, because he shares with me what he felt in his playing days when the team announcers and network announcers would come in. I do view that as their space, as their
Yeah.
turf, even during a media availability time. So I try not to go every single day. I don't want to linger. I don't want to be hovering around and they're like eye rolling, like I don't want to engage. I just want to go sit at my locker. But I try to make sure that I go at least twice to four times a week. I go for at least 10 to 20 minutes. I don't usually stand there the entire session. And then it's kind of beholden to who's there, because they have overlapping work of their own that they're doing. They're doing cage work or yeah, they're reading scouting reports. They're looking at video during that time, and it's hard for them to do it at their locker when there's a dozen media people in the room. They're at least one of them at some point is going to come over and want to engage in a conversation. So the players that I see honestly most frequently that are in there most of the time, starting pitchers are there a lot. So I see Andrew Abbott regularly, Nick Lodolo, Nick Martinez, Brady Singer, and a handful of relievers. And then there's a handful of other position players. And there are days I go down and I have two or three players in mind that I'd like to talk to. If they're there, then I try to engage with them. And if they're not, then I make sure that I do show face because I do agree with that as well. I do think, and I'm not the world's most critical guy. I'm going to give a guy stats and I'm going to give what he's doing. If he's 0 for his last 20, I'm going to say it. I'm probably not going much beyond that. I'm not going to condemn the man. I'm not going to but you are what your stats say you are.
Yeah.
And the same goes when a guy's going well. But sometimes people hear things out of context. They hear things second, third hand. They get an impression that's not always accurate. And maybe it even is accurate. I want to be there in case anybody is upset. if you do have a problem with something I said, if you have a correction, because I screw up, I'm human, all of us do. I welcome it. It's something that in the minors, in the 15 years I was there was one more major issue that happened. Our pitching coach grabbed me, and we were close. Our pitching coach and I would get lunch and post game meals together all the time, and we still occasionally text and talk today. He's out of the game now. He said, "Yeah, there's a player who is saying that you were like ripping him on the air, and he's telling all the guys this, and you probably should go talk to him." And I said, "Thanks, I appreciate it." So I went down there and I asked if he could speak, and he said that his father had heard that I was saying he was nothing more than a minor league pitcher, and he'll never be more than that. I'm like, I definitely don't remember saying anything like that, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to listen to your entire. It was the last start. He said, "Yes." I'm going to listen to the whole thing. And if I find a stretch that I think is along those lines, I'll invite you down there. We'll listen to it together. And if I don't, I'll gladly give you the tape of the whole game and you can listen to it yourself. And I'll be the first to apologize if I did step out of line in some way, but let me go do it. So I go back and then I find the stretch. And I go back to the player again and say, "Can you please come with me?" And I play it for him. And what I said was he was having a rough inning. Things were kind of going to crap. And I said, this is a great example of the difference between an A-ball player and a major league player. At any one time in the minor leagues, you'll find a minor leaguer who on any one pitch and any one swing and any one play can and will be the equal or sometimes the superior to a lot of major league counterparts. But the difference between the A-ball pitcher and the major league pitcher is that the major league pitcher does it more consistently and the A-ball guy doesn't. And that's what's happening right now. And this is a good learning experience for. I wasn't saying you'll never be a major league pitcher. You are literally an A-ball pitcher right now, and that's why. And that's why you're on the game mound. And he was immediately apologetic. And we became friendly thereafter, like even more friendly than we had been. And that's a great example, because that happens more often than you would think. That the girlfriend, the mom, the wife. There was one other occasion where a mom of a player wrote me and said, "Why do you say that so-and-so is a player in writing? Why would you say that? You're saying like he's not really, but like in writing, like they just write it down that he is?" Like, no, he's a righty. Like every time she heard me say he's a righty, she thought I was saying in writing. Like, no, he's right-handed, not lefty, because we're on the radio and I have to describe what hand he's hitting with. But that's an example, that parent, friend, whatever, is then telling the player, "Well, he said this. That's not what I said." And what's the player going to do? Go back and listen to that exact stretch? And so, yes, I do think there is great value in being there so that if there are those circumstances at some point, they can be addressed in some way. And I think part of our job is to try as best we can to humanize the player, to go beyond. And with the Reds, in contrast to what I did in the minors, to me, a big part of that is Jim Day's job. He has great relationships with these guys. The podcast is an awesome individual enterprise that allows him to go a little deeper. And I don't want to entirely step on toes either. Like I do think some of those deeper dives are kind of set up for him. And Jim and I get along great. And that's where over the years I've asked him, he texts me most games and he has, sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it could be 10 things. Here's some stories that could play tonight. And I try to make sure then that we're on the same page so I can set him up so he can hit the ground running. So I don't steal his thunder. I just give it to him with some kind of a lead that he can get right into the story. Because it is hard in today's game with the pitch clock. And I love the pitch clock. Pitch clock is one of the greatest inventions ever. But it's hard to get a reporter or that third person in to tell a story efficiently during the course of an at-bat because the game can just move so fast.
Right.
And so I also view that as part of all of it too.
All right, two quick ones before I let you go here. One, this is just a funny one. We talked about the Cowboy earlier. Does the Cowboy, you get to watch the Cowboy eat? Does he eat anything crazy? Does he eat ridiculous portions? Whenever you guys tell those stories, I feel like Jim Day's in on the joke too, but it always makes me laugh whenever he's talking about some kind of barbecue or some kind of ice cream. What's it like watching the Cowboy eat on a day-to-day basis?
So I love his joke about having an Eaton shirt, which like a giant apron to be able to cover himself. No, he actually doesn't eat that much. He's a very slow eater, which he is very aware of, and he'll bring up all the time. And I'm the opposite. I'm a super fast eater. So it happens regularly that all of us are done, and he is still, pecking away at whatever he has. The biggest wrinkle that we see day to day, especially with press food that can have varying, quality in today's world. He loves hot sauce, adores, and it came to him later in life. He was not that way, he said, when he was younger, but he travels with his own Frank's hot sauce, and he puts
That's
hot sauce
hilarious.
on almost everything. I mean, like, no matter what it is, there'll be a good dollop of hot sauce on there. That happens on a regular basis, but his affection for that food is sincere, but he really doesn't eat that much. What he does do a lot of, though, is Coca-Cola. So, we just saw the Braves, and then Jeff Francoeur, who sometimes does the Braves games, was also on the TBS game in Chicago. And when we call him Frenchie, when we saw him in Chicago, he came up to me and said, "John, I was right next to Cowboy in Cincinnati. He had like 6 Mexican Cokes in one game." He loved the love of Coca-Cola is very legit. There is a really nice standalone tall fridge in the radio booth at home that is full of Mexican real sugar Coke.
That's amazing. All right, last one here. Do you have a favorite ballpark that you've got to play a game or got to call a game from? I don't want to, even if it is Great American Ballpark, let's exclude that. Obviously, that's the home. But do you have a favorite away ballpark that you've ever, or if you don't want to say baseball, if you have a favorite college football venue or NFL venue that you called a game from?
Yeah, I have one of each. So in baseball, I love San Francisco. I think it is just breathtakingly beautiful. Even the outside of it, 24 palm trees for number 24, Willie Mays right in front. The Wall of Fame that's along the side, right by the water. I feel like it's very distinct. It has its own personality in a very organic way. The giant Coke bottle, the huge glove, it doesn't feel like something that was staged or manufactured. It just feels like it almost came into existence on its own. Triples Alley, the McCovey Cove look and feel, the scent of the garlic fries when you're there. Their fans are sneaky, great, and kind of jerky, but in a good way. They are very informed. Like, they know the sport. They cheer and boo at the right moments. They can get a little personal with the players, sometimes I think over the line, but there is a nastiness that I think should be there in a home ballpark. When you picture, to me, and I grew up in the greater mid-Atlantic Northeast, when you picture what a lot of the New York, Philly, Boston environment, San Francisco is everything like that from a fan experience, and maybe even sometimes to a slightly higher level. And I never would have guessed that before I went there. I think that place is awesome. I think it's great. NFL, I love Lambeau, home of the Packers. I just think it's an excellent marriage of a historic venue that retains that 100-plus-year-old feel while being very modernized. So I actually did a playoff game this past year. I did the Bills Broncos game, and Olivia Decker, maiden name Olivia Harlan. First time I ever worked with her as a sideline reporter. She's the daughter of Kevin Harlan, longtime national voice, and his father ran the Packers for a long time. And that during a shared Uber after the game is when I learned from her that her grandfather chose like every nuanced piece of Lambeau, like doorknobs, like where carpet runners were, what the drapes looked like in certain offices, like all these fine details. And it's awesome. It's in the middle of a neighborhood. The legendary Crawls is right across the street, the sandwich diner joint that feels trapped in time from the 60s. It's hard to get to. It's hard to fly into Green Bay. Usually you're flying to Milwaukee and driving 2 hours. But they love football. Their fans are intense and passionate, but also kind. I think it's a great looking stadium that just feels authentically old football while not looking old. It has that modern feel, and their Hall of Fame that's attached there is probably the NFL's equivalent of what the Reds Hall of Fame is in baseball. It's excellent.
Awesome. Yeah, those are two venues I've actually never been to, but both are probably on my bucket list. So
Oh, you got to go. They're both
I need to
terrific.
go clearly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, John, this has been amazing. Appreciate you stopping this morning, taking a little bit out of your time on your off day, and chatting with me. As always, like I said, I'm a big fan. I hope you keep up the great work. But thank you for joining me this morning, and we'll keep an eye out on the Reds the rest of the season, and let's hope they, catch a hot streak and go on a run and see if they can sneak into the playoffs.
You got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
All right. Thanks, John. Go Reds.
Go Reds.